Hello and welcome to tonight's episode of Ulfl. I see that we got a bit of a good reaction on last week's Kamar Daban episode. We'll get some more spooky tales in soon. But this week we've got a bit more of an aerial mystery. Now I realize mountains are high up in the air, but this is a little bit higher and also a little bit more down under. Today I've got the story of the disappearance of Frederick Valentich. Frederick Valentich was a keen pilot who quite suspiciously had an interest in UFOs. But let's get into the disappearance of Frederick Valentich. The sky is a mysterious place. Humans have spent hundreds of thousands of years pondering the seeming emptiness above our heads. Only relatively recently have we been able to make any headway in solving some of the strangeness. Some things remain mysterious. Flights disappear without a trace despite our GPS technology supposedly keeping track at all times. Pilot error, natural phenomena, and the occasional Russian missile have all been blamed in the past. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich isn't as clear-cut. He was in radio contact with the Melbourne Flight Service unit throughout his flight, essentially narrating his own mysterious disappearance. Separating this case from the mountains of other missing pilots is the fact that Frederick Valentich reported seeing a UFO right before his communications cut out. This is his story. Passionate pilot. Frederick Valentich wanted one thing for as long as he could remember: to be a pilot. He wasn't the best student, and from reports he wasn't the greatest pilot either, but his passion drove him ever skywards. Becoming a commercial pilot is no easy task. You need to pass some seriously tough exams and rack up hundreds of hours in the air. Frederick sought to achieve this by joining the Royal Australian Air Force Training Corps. He was 20 years old with 150 flight hours at the time of his disappearance. The RAAF had denied his application to join as a full pilot several times. His academic performance was just not good enough. Failing all 5 commercial examination subjects twice will do that. Valentich was also notoriously reckless, being written up multiple times for foolish flying. Twice, he flew straight into clouds, a very dangerous move considering the lack of visibility and potential presence of another aircraft, just beyond the fluffy white sky pillows. Flying into a cloud is considered so serious that he was nearly prosecuted for it. Another time, he flew into restricted airspace near Sydney. Another potentially criminal act. So we can safely say that Frederick Valentich wasn't going to be Pilot of the Year. His behavior before his disappearance paints a picture of an inept pilot, willing to risk it all for curiosity. One of his instructors countered this image by saying that the boy had a healthy flight discipline. He was bad at spelling, but not a bad student. Dyslexia could explain his trouble with the exams. The disappearance. Frederick Valentich woke up on Saturday morning, 21st October 1978, excited about the day. He had planned a flight out to King Island that evening to either get crayfish or pick up some friends. It was unclear. His issues with paperwork seemed to have muddled the water here. Officially, he listed the purpose of his flight as picking up friends on the island. His friends and family remember him stating that he was going to King Island for crayfish, though. The confusion just adds another layer to the mystery. He was flying a Cessna 182L, registered VHDSJ. The aircraft had enough fuel for 5 hours in the air. At 5:23, he attended a meteorological briefing at Moorabbin Airport and submitted his flight plan. Less than an hour later, he was in the air, headed for Cape Otway. Fred checked in at Cape Otway at 7 p.m. Everything was going perfectly as planned. The next stretch of the journey would take him over open water, something he apparently had a fear for. Fred was no swimmer. The Bass Strait is a 250-kilometer, that's 155-mile, wide strip of water separating Australia from the island of Tasmania. So many people have disappeared in the shallow waters of the Bass Strait that it has earned the nickname the Bass Strait Triangle. Only 6 minutes after his radio check, Fred was back on the horn with the Melbourne Flight Service unit. This is the conversation. Many reports claim that at the end of the recording, an odd metallic noise can be heard before the audio cuts out. From listening to the audio, this doesn't seem to be the case. Frederick Valentich was never seen or heard from again. His plane was never recovered, despite extensive searches by air and sea. The final words spoken to FSU are what makes the mystery particularly odd. It seems as though he was accosted by some kind of unidentified aerial phenomenon, explaining the unexplained. No one really knows what happened to Frederick Valentich on the 21st of October 1978. He disappeared, and we've all been left with a type of mystery that may never truly be solved. One odd detail is that he never notified King Island that he would be arriving. They would have had to turn on the lights along the runway for him to be able to land at all. Could he have never intended to arrive? The idea that he was either planning on committing unalivement or faking his own demise has been floated. His life wasn't great, and he had failed at becoming a commercial pilot. At least that's the rationale. Contrary to the idea that he wanted to escape, stands the fact that he was still only 20 years old. Becoming a commercial pilot can be a long process, and he would have been aware of that fact. Add to that the fact that he had a loving family and a new girlfriend. An intentional disappearance becomes unlikely. Not to mention that it entirely disregards his final radio transmission. Some have theorized that the lights and object that he saw were the reflection of his own aircraft on the water. They suggest that Valentich was so inept a pilot that he actually managed to fly upside down over the water. It's a stretch to assume that he was that incompetent. He had earned his private license after all. Another factor is whether a Cessna 182L would even be able to fly upside down. Obviously, one of the theories is that he was attacked by some kind of unknown aircraft. Not aliens necessarily, but perhaps some kind of advanced drone or other type of military vehicle. It could have been aliens, if we're putting literally every possible explanation on the table though. One detail that makes things even more interesting is that there were reports of UAP sightings in the area. These sightings were only reported after the story, and transcript of the radio conversation had been made public. So take any of those claims with a grain of salt. According to Frederick Valentich's father, Guido Valentich, his son was fairly obsessed with the UFO phenomenon, going so far as to claiming to be afraid of a UFO attacking him while he's out flying. Did he turn this fear into a bit of theater to assist in faking his disappearance? We may never truly know what happened to Frederick Valentich. Personally, I don't think that he faked his own disappearance, although it seems the most likely of the options. What I really truly think happened was some sort of equipment malfunction that caused him to tragically crash into the Bass Strait. Now, what it was that he saw is up for debate. It is one of the more compelling UAP cases, and as someone who has seen something strange zipping around in the sky, I can tell you that whatever's out there, it could definitely have done what Frederick Valentich reported it did to him on that night. But what do you think? Which of the likely explanations do you subscribe to? I'll tell you what you should subscribe to. Subscribe to The Ulfl Show. And like, comment, and sharing is truly caring. But until next time, you stay smart.